In this lesson, we're going to continue to discuss editing and formatting tables. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Sample Files folder, scroll down to 1103 Editing Tables Part 2, and just click Open. You probably remember this table where we placed all of the data from an Excel file. And I had mentioned at the time that there were a lot of problems that we were going to have to fix with this table. Right away, I can see that there are extra rows and extra columns. Why don't we start by deleting them? I'm going to go to the left of that first extra row and then just click and drag when I see that interned arrow to select all of my extra rows. Then I'm going to go under the Table menu to Delete Row. Now we're going to do the same thing with the columns. I'm going to go above that first column with nothing in it, and when I see a downturned arrow, I'm going to click and drag across those two extra columns. Go under my Table menu to Delete Column. I really wanted this top row to be the header, but I wanted it to be one big cell with this type centered. So let me go to the left of that first row, and I'm going to merge the cells to make it one big cell. Go under my Table menu to merge cells. Why don't we make this into a header? But before we do, let's zoom in so we can see the type. I'm going to click and drag across the width of my page. Go back to my Type tool, then go under the Table menu to Convert Rows to Header. So now it's a header. So if I had a very long table and it didn't fit in a particular column or frame, it would repeat at the top of the next column or frame. I'm not happy with the typeface that it currently is, so why don't we change the typeface? I'm going to go under the Type Family pop-up in the Control Panel, all the way down under the M's to Myriad Pro, and in the submenu, Bold. I also wanted my header type centered. Let me click Align Center in the Control Panel. So now we have our header, but I want all of my cells to be taller. So let me go to the upper left-hand corner of my table, and when I see the diagonal arrow, if I click, I'm selecting all of the cells. To make the cells taller in the Control Panel, there's Row Height. And it says at least 0.0417, which is the default. Let me click my up arrow immediately to the left of that field. And at a certain point, it starts to get taller and taller. We're going to go all the way up to 0.5 inches. And I can also see now that the cells are taller, I really wanted my type centered top to bottom within the cells. I'm going to click Align Center. You can see now all of the type is aligned centered top to bottom. The next thing that I'm noticing is where it says at the top of my second column, all dates are class start date. I really didn't want it there. I actually wanted it in a separate column to the left of my first column. So what I'm going to do is click and drag down the cells in that first column immediately below my header to select all of those cells. I want to add another column to the left of that first selected column. I'm going to go under my Table menu to Insert Column. And it's asking where do I want to insert that column and how many columns do I want to insert. Well, I have my first column selected, so right now it would add one column to the left of that selected column. I also could have just gotten an insert point in that column. So now, if I were to just click OK, it's going to add an extra column to the left of my selected column. Let me select in my first column those bottom 3 cells by clicking and dragging across them. And I'm going to merge those cells into one cell. I'm going to go under my table menu to merge cells. So now I have one big cell. I want the type in that cell to be sideways. Well, you can see the different orientations of the type. With the big T, I want the bottom of the type in towards my table. So I'm going to click Rotate Text 270 degrees. And you can see now if I get an insert point in that cell, the insertion is actually sideways with the bottom of the type in towards my cells. I'm going to select all dates are class start date. If you remember when we were originally talking about editing of type, there's something in preferences which allows you to use drag and drop text in your layout, which is a great feature. It allows you to click on type and drag it someplace else. In order to do that, I have to change my preferences. So if you haven't already changed your preferences for drag and drop text, you would want to go on a Mac under your InDesign menu to Preferences, Type. On a PC, it's Edit, Preferences, Type. And where it says Drag and Drop Text Editing, make sure to check Enable in Layout View and click OK. With that on, I could actually just click on my selected type and drag it into the cell that I want that type in. Let me now center that type. I'm going to click Align Center in the control panel. So now I have centered type. I no longer need my second row, the first row under my header. So let me click to the left of that row to select the whole row and just go to Table, Delete, Row. Now we're starting to get someplace. I really don't need this column to be so tall. So I'm going to go over the top of my stroke that is dividing my first column from my second column. And you can see I'm getting these double arrows. If I just click and drag, it's making the first row narrower. The other thing is my header actually now has 2 cells because I added that extra column. Let me go to the left of my header, and when I see that inwardly turned arrow, I'm going to click to select my header. And I'm going to go under my table menu to merge cells. And you can see that it actually recentered the type within that wider header. One of the things I'm seeing is the table is actually still going off my page. Let me just click and drag on that stroke that is dividing these 2 columns. Well, that's looking pretty good. But let me select this type in these cells. I'm going to select all of these cells at once from the October 12th cell all the way down. I wanted them centered as well. So with them selected, I can now just click Align Center in the control panel. Now it's really starting to look like something. But I'm noticing that the width of these selected cells is now actually different. I really wanted them to be the same. How can I do that? Well, I'm going to go under my table menu to Distribute Columns Evenly. Now all of the columns are exactly the same width. Couple other things I'd like to do, but I may have to go back and fix some things that I'm now going to mess up. I'm going to go over this dividing line between where it says Princeton classes and the October 12th date. And I'm just going to click and drag over because I really don't want this particular column to be so wide. Well, now I messed up the width of my table, so I'm just going to click and drag backwards towards the right to make the table the full width of my margins. But now I messed up the widths of my cells. They're no longer equal. So I'm going to go back under the table menu to distribute columns evenly, and that redistributes those columns to make them equal. In the next lesson, we're going to start discussing graphics.